All right, here we're going to be talking about independent and dependent variables. So you've probably heard this phrase in science before. It's the exact same thing in math. The independent variable is the input, or the x value. It's the one that you have more control over. And then the dependent variable is the output, or the y values, and it's the one that changes because of the change that you made for the input, or the independent variable. The y, the output, is dependent on the x, or the input. You make a change, you decide how you want to control the independent variable, and because of that, the dependent variable will change. I think this example helps. I don't know what that's doing there. This example helps. You can water a plant however much you want. If you water it the right amount, it'll grow up nice and healthy and strong. If you water it too much, it dies. If you water it a little bit, it's good, but at least it's alive, but it's not going to grow as healthy as this one. So the amount of water you get to change. That's the variable that you have total control over. And then because you made that change, one of these things is going to change. It's going to be dependent on the change that you made. So the problem is in math, it's not always that it's just one variable you have total control over and the other variable changes. In science, when you do an experiment, that's exactly how it works. You want to change one thing very slightly and see how something else changes because of the changes that you made. In math, it may not always be that you have control over one of them. Sometimes it's a time thing. Sometimes you change this first, or the independent variable somehow changes first, and then the dependent variable changes because of that. Sometimes it's just a cause and effect relationship. Sometimes you directly have control over the independent variable. What you really want to start associating is the independent variable, the IV is the x, the dv, or dependent variable, is the y. All right, so we're going to look at each of these different representations. We're going to look at word problems, an equation, and a table or a mapping, and pick out the independent and dependent variable from each of these. So from a table or a mapping, first off, our table always looks the same. The x is always on this side, the y is always on that side. The letters might change. Like in this first example, the table shows the relationship between m, the number of miles traveled, and g, the number of gallons of gasoline. So the gas is on this side, the distance, which is represented as m, is on this side, so the letters can change. But either way, this represents our x, or our input. This represents our y, or our output. So the independent variable here is gasoline, or g. You can write the letter, or you can write the label. It's just important that you do not write numbers at all. A variable is something that changes, so it's not 4, 5, or 6. It's just the amount of gasoline. It's something that you can change. The dependent variable is our y, or our output. Here that's distance, or the number of miles, represented with m. When we directly talk about a variable, we really are saying the letter, but we could say what labels the letter. When we're talking about a domain and a range, we are not talking about a letter at all. We're talking about numbers. A domain is the set of all x values. That is 4, 5, 6, and 7. So you can see that these are talking about the same thing, but domain is numbers, while independent variable means that it's not going to be a number, it's going to be a set of numbers that can change. The range and dependent variable work the exact same. The range is the numbers that are associated with this column, so it's 88, 110, 132, and 154. Domain and range are numbers. Independent and dependent variable are the label, or the category, or literally the letter that's associated with the x and the y. All right, from an equation, again, equations are similar to tables. They're always set up the same way. When we fill in our x and our y here, our x is our input, our y is our output. So we're going to plug in some number here, that's called our x, and then we receive some number there, that's the output, that's the y. The letters can change, but it always is formatted that same way. The output is by itself. The input has some operations happening to it. 3 times our input plus 5 gives us the output. So this equation is the circumference of a circle. It's given by that formula. 2 times pi times r. 2 is not a variable. Pi is not a variable. Those are both set numbers. 2 is just the number 2. Pi is just the number 3.14. Those are not variables. Those are just numbers. The two variables we have are C and R. C is the output. That's what we get when we do some stuff to the input of R. So we can change the radius, and because of that change that we make to the radius, the circumference is going to change. The circumference depends on the change that we make to the radius. As that radius gets bigger, the circumference will get bigger. This is our output. This is our input, and it's always formatted that same way. The input has some operations happening to it, 2 times pi times r. The output is the number that we get out from that. Noelle charges $15 per hour to babysit, plus an extra $20 if she needs to cook dinner. The equation to find her price, T, is represented below. So we're trying to pick out the independent and dependent variable. The price, T, her total price, depends on the number of hours that she works. So the price is going to be the output. The input, or the thing that she has more control over, is the independent variable, which is H. Please, please, please do not pick a number when it asks you for a variable. That doesn't make any sense. A variable is an amount that can change. It couldn't possibly be a number. All right, last two from word problems. The area of a triangle is dependent on the height of a triangle. The area depends on the height. The area depends on the height. You might also be given an equation for this. Area is 1/2 base times height. Area is the dependent variable. It's the output. Height of the triangle is the input. The cost of Charlie Brown's McDonald's bill is dependent on the number of cheeseburgers he buys. So he can buy as many cheeseburgers as he wants. He gets to decide the number of cheeseburgers. And because he buys more cheeseburgers, he's going to have to pay more, so the cost will change. The cost depends on the number of cheeseburgers. All right, I hope this helps with you try.